when we acquired those people in Tallahassee, we gave them $400 laptops and we put Workspot on it. As soon as they got those laptops, they opened it up. They were mad. They're like, "You're not taking us seriously. We're high-powered CAD people. This is a joke." And we're like, "We're trying something new with you. Take a look at it and then use it and then let us know after a week." A week goes by, we do the follow-up call and they're like, "We can work with this. This is really impressive." And I said, "Okay, let's do another check-in in 2 weeks and then see how it's going." We do a follow-up one and they're like, "We're sold. This is great." And you know what's really cool, Andy? We can take our laptops home and we can keep on working at home like we did in the office. And the speed is right there. We are so happy with this. So we went to this pay-as-you-go model. 3.81 hours a day is what our average across all of our work spots are. We saved about 45% of our costs. I mean, it was huge for us.
Welcome to the Workspot podcast. I'm Brad Peterson, Field CTO at Workspot, and today we're going inside the real-world story of how an AEC firm has been running GPU-accelerated cloud workstations at scale long before it became common. Now, today I'm joined by Andy Knauf, CIO at Mead Hunt, along with Rebecca Yu, Civil CAD Manager and Designer at Mead Hunt, who uses her cloud workstations from work and home and remote locations each and every day. Andy has been with Mead Hunt for 35 years and has guided the firm through a major growth while solving a challenge every AEC CIO faces: how to deliver serious GPU performance, access to massive project data, and a consistent user experience without being tied to a specific office or expensive hardware. Now, in this episode, we'll walk through how Mead Hunt made that shift, what it took to operate it reliably, how designers experience the change, and how a pay-for-what-you-use model helped reduce costs while improving performance. Andy and Rebecca, thanks for joining me today and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Brad.
You know, you guys have been working with us for such a long time and have such a great story. I'd love to share it today on the podcast. And I think what would make a lot of sense is if you started off by actually showing a little bit of the history of the company here. And so folks can get an appreciation for sort of the depth and the breadth of Mead Hunt and then your skills there before we dive into some of the technical details. How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds great, Brad. Yeah, it talk a little bit about my journey. I actually started in 1990, right out of school. It was my first job, and I was really the first IT person at Mead Hunt. So I've been blessed to be at Mead Hunt my entire career. I said 35 plus years now. And when I started, we were just one office and 85 people, and today we're 50 plus offices, 1,400 people across the country. Every year we've been climbing into the ENR top 500. We have a very robust strategic plan that we want to implement here in the next 10 years, where we want to go from 300 and about $75 million company right now to about $1 billion company by 2035. So it's very aggressive growth. There's a lot of things that we want to have in place, and you can see where we've been successful. Our airports, we're in the top 10 in airport design, top 10 in food and beverage, top 40 in industrial process and transportation, and really coming on strong as a power company. So we keep on climbing the ranks. People are excited about joining Mead Hunt. We think we have a great story to share, and it's a great company and a great culture to work on. So we combine all this, the culture, the exciting jobs, that doing things right, treating people correctly. That's really our sell as Mead Hunt. So the last couple of years have been very successful for us, and we think we have a great story to tell. And this really is kind of our story. It really is a look back at our 125 years as we're finishing, celebrating that journey. Starting back in the 1900s with Daniel Mead, a very respected hydrologist who worked on several major dams across the United States, Hoover Dam among others, really kind of set the standard for where we are today and really set what Mead Hunt is all about. And we've been very active in the local community through all those years. in Wisconsin, and then really as we've expanded, we've looked at different markets that we can take that same model that we've started in Wisconsin and take it nationwide, and then finding other companies that we've merged and we've acquired that share that same culture in other parts of the United States, and really build a cohesive team of people that all share the same goals and want the same results, to grow the company, to put people first. That really has been our vision. It's been our goal, and we've been very successful on keeping that up. And in the last couple of years, we've been growing at a 15% rate year over year. And this really shows, kind of our footprint across the entire United States. We have a foothold just, in a lot of states. And we've worked in all 50 states. We work internationally, but we keep all of our offices in the United States right now. We've really focused on that. There's a lot of work to be had just in the states. There's a lot of growth, as you can tell, across the entire United States. So we continue to find excellent jobs and make a difference, and that's really what it's about at the end of the day, is make a difference. A lot of people do the exact same thing that we do, but we feel that we bring a better experience, better relationship with our clients, and enjoying that success that we have.
This is amazing because I know about 100 years ago or more, you guys were just probably one office in Madison or even in Middleton, and you've had all this growth geographically as well as headcount. Has this been a lot of organic sort of hiring and building these, or M&As, or a combination?
It's a combination. You have to acquire to grow, especially when you're trying to go geographically in areas where you don't represent. So a lot of times you have to go through a merger and acquisition to get that foothold, because typically that person has made those avenues into local and state government that you just can't get as an outsider. If we're from Wisconsin and then we go down to South Carolina, they don't know us. They don't necessarily maybe would trust us, and that's where acquiring a local firm, that's has a relationship built, and then we bring in additional expertise, and then it's a partnership where we can show them where they can be and help them expand in that area. But it's getting that local presence is very important for us, because we do work on local, state, federal, quite a bit, and those relationships are really the backbone for our company. At the end of the day, like I said, there's a lot of people that can do the same work, but it's really the relationships, it's the trust, it's the making sure that you can deliver what you've set to do. That's extremely important, and those relationships are what it's all about for us.
It's amazing. Before we go into cloud workstations and how you're using them now, we can go back to how you used to do this by shipping high-end laptops everywhere. And imagine if you were doing that today and trying to grow the company by a factor of 3 by break, fix, FedEx, laptops and all that sort of thing. So that would be a pretty big struggle. So why don't we go back and talk about how you sort of used to do things and the challenges that created?
Yeah, I mean, and that really was the part that stalled out our company. We went to California. There was a lot of jobs in California, and we saw the opportunity to expand out there. We bought an office out in California, but we weren't able to efficiently work. It was too far away. There was a lot of issues back in the day in the 90s, especially trying to work offices that were far away. Nobody really had a good answer for that at all. And we lost money because, it's bandwidth was slow, and the technology just wasn't evolved to where it was today. So even though we saw great opportunity and a great amount of money to be had with going more across the United States, we just didn't have a good we didn't have a good system in place to be able to share bandwidth and people that it was efficient for us. So we struggled mightily for years. So I think it was around about 2012 or 2013 when we're like, we have to find something that's going to be able to work, well for us. We had tried a couple options before that. We had done some Citrix servers, and we worked on a couple different things, but really the file sharing thing was where we needed to start with. Like, what kind of solution can we get where we can share files, where people aren't overwriting files, and we're able to do work, regionally without a problem. And that's where Panzera came into play back in I think it was 2013 when we really finally got into Panzera, and that solved our first major problem. How can we go from office to office, not overwrite files, and work on the same file, and not lose anything? And that solved that problem. But then we still had the big problem where you had to be in an office, you couldn't be remote, you had to have an expensive amount of hardware in those offices. So those smaller offices that we had, they still had the problem. How can we get to a small office and not have to spend $40,000 at the time? It's cheaper now, but like $40,000 of infrastructure in a 6-person firm. So we struggled mightily on that. And then the thing happened. We had an office that we were looking to acquire a couple people down in Tallahassee, Florida, and I only had 6 weeks to get an office up and running. And it was 6 people, but they were high valued people. We wanted to hit the ground running. It was going to be our first office in Florida, and we had to have a solution that was just going to knock it out of the park and not break the budget on trying to get this office set up. And oh, by the way, back then you couldn't get internet that quick. Like, I had 6 weeks to get the office. I'd had to get a fiber line in there. They're like, well, soonest we can do it is 3 months, but most likely 6 months before we can get fiber. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And that's when I really looked at Workspot. Like I said, we had done some work with Citrix, and it fell short. People were saying they were losing 15 to 20% of productivity on that program. We did different VDI solutions, and none of them really, held a candle to what Workspot was. So when I got introduced to it, Dan, Rebecca, other people started doing testing on, and they're like, you know what? This is not bad. We went to our champion group, and we started testing out with the champion group, and they're like, we're not losing that 15 to 20% that we were losing with traditional VDI hosting those solutions. This is actually going to work. And then when we acquired those people in Tallahassee, that was our those people were like, we gave them $400 laptops, and we put Workspot on it. And as soon as they got those laptops, they opened it up, they were upset. They were mad. They're like, you're not taking us seriously. We're high-powered CAD people. You gave us these $400 laptops. This is a joke. And we're like, we're trying something new with you. Just take a look at it and then use it, and then let us know after a week. A week goes by, we do the follow-up call, and they're like, this is we can work with this. This is really, really impressive. This is good. And I said, okay, let's do another check-in in 2 weeks, and another week, and then see how it's going. We do a follow-up one, and they're like, we're sold. This is great. And you know what's really cool, Andy? We can take our laptops home, and we can keep on working at home like we did in the office. And the speed is right there. We are so happy with this. We didn't know about this solution at all. And that was really the start of the Workspot story for us. Is that first little 6 people working in a small office with a Comcast very slow line, but it didn't matter because they were able to do it on a slow not even a fiber line. I think it was a DSL line at the time, and they were still efficient and able to work. Everything kind of exploded after that.
So that's pretty cool. They're on a DSL line and they have a $400 laptop. Now, for sure, if you're getting acquired or hired into a company and they give you that, you're not going to be happy. But what's cool about this is clearly they're not working on that CPU or the GPU in that endpoint device. They're connecting into the cloud. So let's talk about this a little more specific. Now, Now, one of the things that was cool about the laptop, I think you bought these things after they came off lease. And then even though they were $400 and they were unimpressive, you could take them and connect them to a couple of external monitors, I would imagine, to give them more real estate. And then when you use that to connect over even a modest DSL line connecting into the cloud, as long as what they're running up there with GPU power and access to big, disk drive and large files and so forth, and all the applications and the different versions of the applications that they needed, then they were super productive and not only working as an individual, but collaborating with the team, because the team is all coming in from everywhere and they're all connected up into the cloud and everything's super fast. And I would imagine there were some folks that came to you and said, hey, this is kind of cool because I don't have to go into the office just to find my hardware, but I can stay home. And like some folks have an hour commute, each way. And so this changes productivity and sort of flexibility of lifestyle. What did you guys experience there?
Yeah, I mean, that flexibility was apparent right away. We started with that office, but then we had a couple of things happen. We had some hurricanes happen in Florida and South Carolina. And, I just had to make a call and said, make some reservations. I needed some more work spots. I need people to be able to work. They're going to be away from home for a week, 10 days. They still wanted to work. As soon as we knew that they were safely away from the danger that they were in, we're like, you're in a hotel, and they had nothing else to do until they could go back to their home, and they had work spots and they were working. We had a fire come within a mile of our office in Santa Rosa, and everybody was evacuated, obviously, because of the fire. And again, we're worried about the employees, but if they're at home, they want to continue to work. They can't just be worried about what's going to happen to that office. So luckily, our office didn't burn down, but for the week or two that we couldn't get to that office, Workspot was the answer. And then, the big thing happened, COVID came along, and, those were that week that COVID, we sent everybody home. Those 2 weeks, I said, after we sent people home, were the best 2 weeks of my career, when most people were just panicking and they didn't know what to do. And they said that was the worst 2 weeks of their career. That was the best 2 weeks because we made the allocations with Workspot. We had everything set up. And as soon as we sent everybody home, we just turned on more work spots. And it was like nothing happened. It was some of the most productive times that we've had in the company because there was nothing to do. And, nobody ever wants to go back to what COVID was, but you were locked in your home and you either watched Netflix or you did work. And that was about all you could do back then. And luckily, most people in our company just focused on work. And because they had this solution, that it was just, amazing. And it really showed to the leadership of the company how valuable it was to have a solution like this. And that, you always have that tool in your toolbox and you don't know when you're going to have to use it. And global pandemic was actually, I think, 20 or 25 on my emergency, list that I didn't think was going to happen. But all of a sudden it went from 25 to number one. And we had to have something that was going to work in place. And Monday morning came along. After the Friday, we sent everybody home, and it was business as usual, as much as business as usual could be back in those times. But it was really, take all your stuff home, plug it in, we got you.
Well, now it's amazing. And if you look at this architectural diagram that we have here, you guys started in the central region and we had these GPU workstations up in Azure, right? And the data there. And then I think you had like physical Panzer appliances kind of scattered around the country, but in offices. You'd have to go into those offices. So that didn't work. So then eventually you guys expanded to East and West. And now if you have Panzers in all three areas, and then you have Workspot, GPU accelerated workstations in all three areas, you have proximity to any designer anywhere in the country, it feels like. Is this how you kind of started and grew?
Yeah, I mean, we have Azure, and actually we're expanding to our 5th location now. So we went everywhere. We went east, west, north, and south. And we didn't really have a central area. So now we're actually even going in like Wyoming, of all places, to get more because the Rockies are always kind of difficult to work around, and with Denver, and it's always tough. So we really have everything covered. There's not a spot in the continental U.S. that we have an issue. We have close Azure spots. It's easy to turn up a Panzera in the Azure locations. We have the redundancy. If something goes down, say we got people in West that are working and something would happen to an Azure site out West, they fail over to the south, or into the Wyoming area. Something happens in the north, they fail over to the east side. So because you have all these sites, you're having all that failover. And oh, by the way, it doesn't cost you anymore to have that. This is all just built in. This is how Azure works. So you're able to move and operate and turn up and turn down sites. It really is the easy button. It's just, where do you have to be? What do you need to do? And just do it. It really is that simple. It's just, where do you need those workstations at? What do you need people to be doing? And literally you can get it up and going in just virtually just minutes. It's just allocating the Azure resources, putting Workspot on top of them, and just rock and roll.
Nice. Flexibility, failover, redundancy, power from anywhere. These are great messages. Also in the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, there's been a change in how you can actually consume this. Before, you had to kind of reserve it for the month and you had to pay for it, even if folks weren't using it nights and weekends and so on. But now it's a pay-as-you-go model, hourly. So how has that changed the cost analysis for this?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big thing for us, because like you said, that original model was you paid for 24/7, 365. And quite honestly, there was people that weren't using it all the time. I mean, we have designers that would be 8 hours a day, all week long, they'd be in Workspot. And then we had people that were in it for 2 or 3 hours. Well, you hate to pay for somebody to be in it 8, 9, 10 hours a day when they only need to be in it 2 hours a day. So that model did change a couple of years ago, where it was pay as you go. So on average now, with all of our work spots, people average, it's kind of funny, it's 3.81 hours a day is what our average across all of our work spots are. So we saved about 45% of our cost because we went to this pay-as-you-go model rather than having that subscription there for everybody full time. I mean, it was huge for us to have that. And everybody thinks, well, I got to get a license and it's 8 hours a day. Why is it 3.81? Well, it balances out. Some people are in it still 8 hours, but some people maybe aren't in it that day for whatever reason. They're working on office applications and they got a bunch of meetings, and they don't have a reason to get into Workspot and need the high-powered GPU. So they're doing some other work where they don't have to be pulling up Bentley or Autodesk or whatever it is. They're just using their local resources, and it's really cheap, and we're not paying for it when they're not using it. And really, that's the big difference that this new model is you really just buy it when you need it and don't pay extra for it. And I think that's probably the biggest selling point in the last couple of years, was that change in philosophy from owning that thing that entire time, and now just using it when you need to use it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Over the years before that, it was always a math exercise of, hold on, if I have a liquid-cooled workstation or a laptop and I ship it around and then it breaks and I have to fix it and then one gets lost or stolen, okay, there's cost there. Okay, then I go into the cloud and I do a cloud workstation, GPU accelerator. Okay, there's cost there. And, maybe they were equal, and maybe in some scenarios one was higher than the other, but it was always like, I'm not sure. But it kind of feels like now with this 45% benefit that you're talking about of consuming it only when you use it, it almost feels like hands down, it's always a better choice, especially a company of your size who's designing across the country here, to have the flexibility you have and the cost advantage. Like, would you ever go back to like full laptop hardware? And by the way, not to mention the supply chain associated with delivering that stuff. Is it a no-brainer now? The financial thing is just sort of the last element of this to argue?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a proponent of those high-powered laptops at all, because and we still get pushback from people because they still want to have that. They're like, I have to have that really high powered laptop. Here's the problem. So we give them the high power laptop and they're not using Workspot. And then they do take it home because they say they have to work from home. Well, you still got to get access to those files. Well, if you're working in a local office that has, had the Panzer in it, and then you go at home, well, then how are you going to work on those files? They're like, well, I'll just move them off the network. No, we don't want you, or we to take that file off of the network, because you know why? You take that design file off of the network and then you put it back up there later on. Well, in the meantime, 2 other people get into that file and they make changes, and then when you copy your file back over it, you just deleted all the stuff that they did. So that's not an answer. That's not a good solution. We don't want things taken off our network. We don't want people to do things offline, because there's always somebody else who needs access to a file. Almost across the board, that's going to happen. If it's anything design-wise, there's not a one-person team anywhere. I mean, there's always somebody else who needs to be in it. So if you're working from at home, you gotta have the ability to be able to get to the files the right way, and you got to be able to get to your workstation the right way. And the only right way to do it is to have it all virtual and do it. You can't split hairs. You can't do one without the other. So that's really the important lesson, and that's why we purposely. I mean, we have hardly any high-powered laptops at all. I mean, there's a few here and there for just some real specialized things that we do. But for the most part, when I have somebody saying, I gotta have a ZBook, I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't. Then this is why. Well, the other company I worked at, we've never did anything like that. Well, this is how Mead Hunt works. This is very efficient. This is what you need to use. I know you maybe work different at the company you came from, but we found great success in this, and you're going to be doing this if you want to continue to work at our company, because this is the model that we've gone through, and it's a model that has been in place for almost a decade. So we know the track record of that model, and it's very, very successful for us across that almost decade that we've been using it.
It's the design efficiencies and the cost efficiencies that you're talking about that a company of any size can take advantage of, for sure. But clearly, if you're going to grow from where you guys are to $1 billion, it's almost like there's no way to do this. You'd have so many variables associated with hardware all over the place that you can really centralize it, virtualize it, and really get the bang for the buck now with the new pay for what you use. So that's wonderful. Now, in the corner of the screen, you see Rebecca down there working with 3 monitors, right? So I think it's been so far this great story of how the CIO and the CFO love this. I think we should let Rebecca tell us her experience that she's had, because she's been doing this for, I think, 6 years now, 7 years, 8 years?
I've been using Workspot for at least that long, yes. And I can tell you a little bit about what it was like prior to using Workspot on a couple jobs. There was a time when I was asked to work on a project that was up in Portland. I'm down in California, Portland, Oregon. And so I would actually have to physically go to that office in order to be able to work on the project, because there wasn't a good way of us being able to share our files back and forth. This was long before the days of Workspot. And so I would have to take the 6 a.m. flight. That would mean getting up at 4 a.m. and take my, whatever I needed with me. And I would fly up to Portland, and I'd be up there for the week. And then I would fly home, and be able to spend the weekend at home. And then I would have to repeat that once or twice a month for about 6 months. And that got very old very, very fast, obviously, for many reasons. But that was the only realistic way for me to be able to work with that team on those files at that point in time. There have been other times when I wanted to be able to work at home, and I would take my laptop that I had at the time home with me. But as Andy had mentioned before, right there, I'd want to work on some files. Well, I didn't have real access to them. And so I'd have to try to be accessing, our network server that was away in the office. It would take 10, 15 minutes for me to be able to open up, frankly, a very basic sort of AutoCAD file. And it was so painful. And then I would try to do very minor little edits, like just change a line, change a layer, nothing even difficult within these files. And again, it would be minutes before I would get a response to be able to do anything that I needed to be able to do. And so it was impossible. You basically just couldn't do it. So as soon as we had a Workspot sort of solution in place, I was very excited to be able to try it out. And as I've mentioned, over the last few years, I've been almost 100% remote. So being able to do my Workspot, to be able to get in and work on design files wherever I need to be able to do that, whether that's from my home office, going physically into the office, if I'm working at a different office that week, if I'm at a conference, wherever I happen to be, on the job site, wherever that is, I can just get in. I have access. All of my programs are set up. I don't have to reset any of my settings. They're just there. Everything is installed. Everything is ready to go. And I have access to the files as well. So it's not just the programs, it's also all of my files, all of my settings, everything.
So, hey, let's talk about what it looks like at home and when you're traveling. So what kind of laptop do you have and what's it connected to? How many monitors and what sort of network connection do you have? And then if you go mobile to a customer, what does it look like there? And if you're in the office, you land on maybe a hoteling spot or something, those three areas would be really neat to hear.
So home office, I've got three monitors all being able to be plugged in. It's just as Andy had mentioned before, a very basic little, HP, nothing special to write home about sort of laptop. So, if I'm able to do like my Outlook and, Word, those sorts of programs, I'll go ahead and run, on this just regular internet, nothing special, but hardwired in to be able to connect to it, able to plug in from there. And then I remote then into the Workspot. And depending on what it is that I'm doing, I will choose how many of those monitors that I want to display the Workspot on. So if I need to have, Teams up as well as Outlook, maybe I'll only dedicate one monitor that day to the Workspot so that I'm able to see what's happening there as well as what's happening on the laptop at the same time. Or maybe I'm truly in design mode. I don't care what's happening on anything else. I put myself on do not disturb, for all of those other things. I really need to be able to just focus on what's happening, and I may take over all three. And I can just toggle that anytime I'm logging in.
So you got cable modem into the house, and then you said you had a wired connection. That's pretty good too, because you don't have wireless, which would add a little bit of latency, which is slightly annoying. If you have a chance to have a cable modem and you can put an Ethernet in, do it, right? To minimize latency. That's always good. It certainly works over Wi-Fi, but do everything you can to make your experience even better.
And typically, if I'm working out of like a hotel or something of that nature, then I am usually doing it, hotel Wi-Fi or in an airport, something like that. You don't really have, other options. So I have experienced both, and it's definitely better wired, but it will work.
Oh, and then you might have like a phone you could do a hotspot through, I guess,
yes,
in a pinch.
Definitely have had to use that situation as well.
Now, what applications do you primarily use?
It's mostly going to be Civil 3D as well as Bluebeam. Those are going to be my big sort of workhorses. As CAD Manager, I'm supporting, basically anything infrastructure related that we're using there. So a lot of the different Autodesk products related to that. So beyond Civil 3D, there may be some other programs in there like Recap or InfraWorks or, associated things to those made by some other people like maybe AviPlan through Transoft. Some other things that may also be sort of, visually very, memory intensive sorts of things. Not something that I would want to try to attempt on just my little laptop. So very thankful to be able to log in and use all of those extra GPUs when needed. Well,
that's pretty cool because you have different sets of apps and every app sort of behaves and requires different resources. Like some apps are CPU intensive and some are actually, single threaded. So they're going to jam on a single CPU, so you got to have something ready for that. And then they might be, GPU intensive as well. And then some might have huge files. Some applications might be super chatty, like they're opening all sorts of files and closing them. You don't even know it's happening because they have to pull all that together to give you that full view. And so as you connect in from this little $400 laptop with some screens, you don't have to worry about its capability. You hit the GPU accelerated workstation in the cloud, and it's connected to those high-speed networks as well as the solid-state storage, and bam, it's doing all those things. So that thing's crushing everything. That's cool. Now, what does the device that you're carrying need to do? What capabilities does it have to just display and and give you this. Do you have a special keyboard, a special mouse, or anything like that?
I have a wireless keyboard and mouse to be able to connect to them, but they're just generic Logitech, keyboard and mouse.
So, Andy, you got some good stats on this. How long do these devices typically last the designers? Because normally, liquid cooled, you're 2 years in and they already want a new one. So what's the shelf life on these lower expensive endpoints you've been using?
It really depends on what's happening out in industry. So like when we went from Windows 10, if we were on Windows 10, we could probably be using some of these laptops yet, but because Windows 10 went away, we had to convert everything over to Windows 11. That was our biggest expense. So a lot of times it's just keeping up with whatever operating system is out. That's typically the line in the sand. It's not, hey, we have a 2-year, we have a 3-year, and then we got to rotate out computers, because most people, it's like every 2 or 3 years, they'll rotate them out. We can go 6, 7, 8 years sometimes if we pick up a laptop that's gone through a year lease. Sometimes we do that. And then, we get them like half the cost, after they've only been through a 1-year lease, because some people recycle their laptops faster than others.
Oh, well, that's pretty interesting because, these laptops, they can run, especially if they're not super high performant, like liquid cooled. It's just a standard laptop. It could run for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and if you don't really need a lot out of it, it's probably doing what you need. It's interesting to note. Now, if you were to take your GPU accelerated workstations in the cloud and update those to Windows 11, for maybe security reasons or performance or for compatibility with new applications, do you also have to, or have you decided to take the endpoints from Windows 10 to 11, or do you leave them at 10?
Well, no, you got to pull everything over to 11, because, when when you can't, when Microsoft has the end of life, you got to shut it down. So then, you move everything over to 11, and then it's just, what service pack are you throwing them on there? So, like right now, it's a lot of work for us to move everybody up to 25H2. And if there's desktops out there, you got to go to each one of those desktops and you got to update all those desktops. Well, if they're in the cloud, pushing that update is very, very quick. So it's easier to keep those stations up to date, more so because they're easier to get to. They're not turned off. You have access to turn them on and off very easily. You have more control over those virtual workstations than, Jill just took her laptop home and she's had it shut off for the last 4 days. And I got this important security update that I want to put on Jill's machine, but she's got it off. So unless I have a wake on LAN, which we have on a lot of machines, then, we got to plug it in. But if it's not on a network someplace, it doesn't matter that we can't do anything. And so it's got to be someplace that we can wake it up, and it's on a LAN connection, and we can actually wake it up and apply those patches to it.
That's great. And we don't mean to pick on Jill, of course. I'm sure she's a valued employee, but
we love Jill, but just whenever she goes home and, keeps her machine off for a long time.
Exactly. Well, so that's the beauty of it. Okay. So that's pretty cool. Now, the way the pay-as-you-go model works in the cloud is kind of new, because before, when you had them for the year, they were persistent and they were just always running and you'd pop back in and keep working, right? Now, this 45% cost advantage comes with a bit of a cost because, okay, listen, I have to fire it up every time I want to run it, but when I'm not using it, I let it go and it's gone and I'm not paying for it. That's beautiful. But now that means next time I use it isn't sitting there running with all my windows where I left them. I got to initiate a new one. Plus, there's a great thing there, as you mentioned earlier, is if I got to push out a new OS patch or something, I do it to everything, because if someone wanders in and fires up their new instance of a GPU accelerated workstation every day, it of course gets the latest and greatest image. So that's good. Now, Rebecca, on your side though, what is the experience different on your side now? If you wake up in the morning and you want to, say, start work, so tell us about that process, because that's different, that's new. And then once you get in, I think it's pretty much the same there. Then you're working away and everything is great, right?
Prior to the pay as you go, you would log in once in the morning and you were good, right? It was yours for the day, so you weren't particularly worried about reconnecting if you had to go to an you had a meeting for an hour, or you were off at lunch or whatever, you're on a long phone call, so you were no longer it disconnected on you. Now you have to pay a bit more attention to what is going on, because you do have to reconnect each time, and sometimes those reconnects can take a few minutes. It may be one of those things, hey, you know what? I need to start up my Workspot. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and then I'm going to go make myself a cup of coffee and come back, because it could take 3-4 minutes to be able to connect, which is annoying. But if you are, a user of a lot of these high-end graphical types programs, there are a lot of times when you're used to having to wait for a lot of things anyway. But it's just another sort of time when you might have to wait for some of those things. Once you've connected, you really don't know a difference, right? You're simply in.
That's cool. Yeah, those are sort of your standard operating procedures. I suppose when you bring someone new into Workspot, you say, okay, hey, this is powerful, and these are the way you use it. Slightly different than something, but the rest of it's amazing. So that's really interesting. Now, Andy, what's the timeout? Do you guys have a timeout set with like no inactivity on a machine that after 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, then it's just shut down?
Yeah, and there was great discussion on that timeout, because you're paying if somebody's not using their machine. So we settled in on 75 minutes. So if you're away in a meeting, typical meetings are an hour. It's not that bad. You can get back onto your Workspot and keep on going if you're at a meeting or whatever.
Yeah, that's good. And so if everybody knows the rule and they know the deal, that's it. And if you take your laptop into the meeting and you kind of goose it a little bit, you can buy yourself another 75 minutes. And I suppose folks know that, right? And, the spirit of it, of course, is that if you just literally went home or you worked for an hour on the weekend and then walked away to watch a football game, that it just says, okay, well, thanks for the contribution, but I'm going to turn it off now, right? And if everyone gets used to that sort of process, it's something I think is pretty reasonable to live with as an end user, for all the gain and the benefit you get. And it certainly saves the company a lot of money. And it's interesting. It's kind of like, from my perspective, I would guess if you're saving 45% on all this, that's quite a savings. It could be the case that you could even give a bigger GPU potentially to a certain power user, because they're only going to use it for 2 or 3 hours, where if you had to commit it to them for the month or the year, you couldn't really afford that.
Yeah, we could move around to higher GPUs and give people other power. If they're running an 8 GPU, we're going to give them a 16 GPU or 32 GPU, and maybe they're doing heavy renderings or something like that. It's easy just to move them over to a faster machine. But you pretty much hit the nail on the head too with the timeout. We tried it without the timeout, and we told everybody we wanted people to get out of the machines. Well, guess what? People just don't do that on their own. If they can be in it 24/7, 365, that's what they want, because they don't want to have that little annoyance, but I kind of look at it like, we're in Wisconsin, and, I can just go out to my car and just drive my car, but it's cold for the first 3 or 4 minutes. If I do that, I really like to electric start my car and then get into it. I'm nice and warm, and I'm going, and I'm just going. I don't have to worry about being cold for 3 or 4 minutes. That's kind of how I look at it. I'm like, I got emails to check, I got something else to check, I'm gonna get a little coffee. And if I look at how much that saves, for us, it's millions of dollars. It's not a small amount of money. It's millions of dollars. And if you look at like budgets lately, software keeps on going up. So you got to try to find money wherever you can. And it's not like, well, you know what, we're not going to buy as much Civil 3D this month because we don't have the money for it. We can't do that. That's not an option. So wherever we can find little advantages, that's where we're gonna find. And oh, by the way, when we need a faster workstation, we don't have to pay for it. When Azure rolls out their latest GPU workstations, we just move to it. We don't have to pay for it. When your laptop gets old and it's too slow, what happens? You go back, you got to get a new laptop, you got to acquire it, you got to put your 3-year, lease on it or whatever it's going to be. You got to set it up. There's yada, 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 all this time that gets spent into getting somebody a new piece of equipment. Here it's, new GPUs are in there. We're going to move your workstation over to this new SKU, and bam, you're working on that faster machine. And it's the easy button. It's not spending all that extra time, and it's human power, and it's cost what that's going to be to make that happen. We don't have those, we don't have those instances. So when you add all that up, you put all those factors in there, that's when you see value in what Workspot is and what it brings to the table.
Yeah, I like that. And pay as you go is just across the board, helps so many folks like yourself. So you're telling me all your CAD application companies don't have a pay as you use model?
Well, yeah, I mean, they do, but it actually costs us more doing that. They made it to their advantage. It's not to our advantage. It's to their advantage. So Autodesk has tokens. I don't have to buy a full license for somebody. Get them a token. This is really great. Well, if they use it for 2 minutes during the day, you're paying for 24 hours. So then you got to try to educate people that if they're going to be in it, make sure that they use it for a long time. And instead of using it 5 days on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and put 15 minutes or 25 minutes of time over the week over 5 days, do all your work on Monday or Tuesday. Otherwise, instead of spending $28 a day, now we're spending, 100 and whatever it is. I can't add it in my head, $135 or whatever it is for the week.
Yes, that's tough. And so you're kind of cornered there. So I liked what you said earlier. You got to try to find different ways where you can save money. And so the pay as you go with the cloud workstation is a obvious win. And so I love that. Now, I know we've been talking about all these great advantages, and Rebecca patiently has been sitting there and she's been dying to show us a live demonstration. What application would you like to show us you're running on Workspot?
So right here, we've got the Workspot client. So I'm able to simply double click on the icon here in order to be able to get access to the Workspot that's been assigned to me. The other icons that you're seeing here are some additional machines that we have set up for people who need something just, on a very short-term sort of basis. They need to be able to log in and be able to do something. Like we have a couple that are like visualization type machines. So software that they may not normally have installed on their machine, but they need to be able to use a particular program. They're able to log into this, be able to do what they're doing, and then get off.
Well, that's nice because those are shared,
They
right?
are.
So if they need to get to a special app or maybe a super powerful one for just a moment, and then if someone's using it, they probably have to wait until they're done and then, oh, now it's available. Now I'm going to use it.
Correct. And we do have a dashboard that shows if one of these virtual machines is in use, so you know which one to select for what it is that you need to do. And then there's a list of there as to what programs are installed. So if you're looking for a particular application, you make sure that you're selecting the right one. So now that I'm logged into the Workspot itself, you'll see that it looks very much like any other desktop running Windows 11. So I'm just opening up Civil 3D over here, and I'll also launch Bluebeam at the same time. Just be able to show you a couple of different files in here. Like I said, once you are within the machine itself, you really don't notice a particular difference there.
Oh, that's great because the virtual desktop would span across multiple monitors, and then all the windows you'd had open inside those monitors would all be coming from the virtual desktop.
Correct. And sometimes that's exactly what you want, and other times it's more helpful to be able to sort of use both computers sort of in conjunction at the same time. Sometimes you'll be needing to do things, say through Teams or on Outlook or some other things, which may actually work better on the physical hardware that you're working on, as opposed to trying to deal with that being a virtual machine. Teams, if you're logged into it in multiple locations, then you may get notifications on both, and you're like, am I answering the call through this machine or am I answering the call through this machine? So here, I've just got Bluebeam open up a session. It's going to, pull down that file immediately, being able to see what's going on there. And Civil 3D has decided to open up in the background. I'll minimize that for a second. So, if I want to be able to do a comparison between these two different ones, I can still, do a split vertical, between two different files. So I can see what's going on between them, visually speaking, like you would not know that you were on anything other than a regular computer for anything that you're trying to do, within the program. It's still going to launch everything that you need, or get to wherever you want. Same thing if I switch back over here to Civil 3D. All right, I'm able to open and launch files and do everything that I would expect within the program. as quickly as Civil 3D allows you to be able to do those things, which is always challenging sometimes, but it's really no different than if it was just desktop. So if I want to both, yeah. So it's trying to connect to a lot of different things all at the same time. And depending on what it is that you're trying to do in here, like if I want to take a look at this surface in more detail, right, I can come here and I can do something like go to my object viewer on it. So I can, look at it in sort of, a more 3D sort of perspective out of it. And, this is all happening, right behind there. I can come in here and look in. I can change it, from my realistic to 3D hidden or to conceptual or whatever, sort of style it is that I need in order to be able to really sort of find out what is happening individually at that part of the design right at that moment in time.
So, Andy, now Workspot has watch and trends, which is real-time analysis and then trend analysis. And it's set up such that you can take a look at any issues, alarms, things that might be happening across all your users. And then even trend analysis, like sort of, GPU usage over time or CPU or memory utilization and that. Are you guys able to keep a pulse on the productivity and the issues that many of your users might be having across the company because it's centralized into Workspot and those dashboards are made available?
Yeah, I mean, those are very helpful. I mean, we can see what's happening. We can we can look at trends, like people can leave reviews in there. Like if they're having problems, we get reviews, so we see what's happening. We know, how much GPU and CPU they're using, and do they need more, or do they need less? So all that statistical information is there for us, and how long they're using it, per day. We've got a window into all that, and then we can take all that and we can make them into reports. If we want to make it a report as to how things are going for a month, we can definitely do that and base that off of how much we're spending a month, and we get a really good idea of what's happening with Workspot for us.
Excellent. All right. Well, Rebecca, thank you for the live demo. I love it. And, I got to tell you, this section that I have here in the podcast is to get to know the two of you even better. And in that, I have the speed round here. And so with that, I'll ask you guys some speed round questions and we'll rattle off some answers and really get to know you guys. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Can't wait.
Beautiful. All righty. Here's the first one. What's the biggest misconception about GPU cloud workstations in AEC?
I think the biggest thing that I hear about is the speed. Nobody really believes that it's really the same speed, and then it's the cost. So speed and cost. They're like, it's going to cost a lot more, and it's not going to be the same speed. And it's so hard to convince people otherwise, but until you really jump into it, you got to see that for yourself.
And Rebecca, what would you say?
I would completely agree. Everyone's sort of confused at first when we tell them that they're going to be working, using a Workspot, or like with a lot of new users trying to sort of explain how it's going to be, and they're like, but what do you mean it's in the cloud? Why? I'm like, no, it's just, you're just logging in. Just think of it as a terminal, and you just log in, and as soon as you're there, it won't be any different.
You almost have to really do it and experience it to understand that it'll work. It will work fine. I remember during the lockdown, Andy, you were getting all these text messages and emails and stuff from loved ones of their family members that were able to work from home, continue working, and how important that was to them, as well as to you, because you guys, the work you do is you charge hourly. I mean, you have these billed hours that you have as you're doing a lot of engineering work for your customers. So to continue to adding value for your customers, to being able to bill them, and then being able to pay your employees is great. Lockdown or not, the flexibility of someone working remote, not even anywhere near an office or not, becomes sort of a big advantage, not only to you, but to the customer and to the employee. That sounds pretty promising.
During the lockout, it was amazing. The people didn't understand how it all worked and why we were in the cloud and why we did certain things, and it all clicked. It all made sense, and a lot of people that second guessed what we were doing or what IT was doing, they actually called and apologized and said, "We get it now."
Congratulations on the success that you guys have had in setting yourself up, because I know you had this figured out before the lockdown, which is amazing, to not anticipate a lockdown, but just to be completely prepared. So once it happened, you guys were ready to go. That is pretty cool. Now, number 2 here is, if it's possible to distill this down to one, what is the one metric that tells you the platform is truly working for you and your company?
At the end of the day, it really is. It reverts back to speed and cost. We can deliver this very quickly. People are still as productive, and the cost is reasonable.
Nice. Yeah. And I know for Rebecca, the one thing for her is that she doesn't have to get up at 4 a.m. and fly to Portland.
Well, I was going to say that people usage, right? People use it. If it was not working for them, our users would definitely have let us know that, and we would not have the sort of widespread adoption that we have today.
Nice, which takes us right into the next question, number 3, which is, what did designers care about that IT underestimated?
Designers care about speed. They don't really care about how the things work on the back end, right? That IT is making work. They just know that they need to be able to get access to their files, that then they have access to them quickly, and that they can use the programs that they need to be able to do, because all they're worried about is their deadlines and getting their design work done to get that stuff out the door.
Andy, any thoughts there?
Well, I can only relate to when we set up the Citrix servers, and I had the solution. I bought the server. I thought we had everything right. We had everything going. We had everything tested out. Things seemed like they were working fine when I was doing it on my simple test. But when we put it in production, and when I remember going up to a very productive user, and they're like, "Well, just so you know, I'm 15% slower." And I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, I'm 15% slower working on this Citrix solution that you gave me." And I mean, my heart sank. It was actually one of my worst days at work, because I took away a desktop solution that was working for them, and I gave them a Citrix solution at the time, and it was 15% slower. And that's really when things kicked in. I'm like, I can't have this happen again, So, I mean, we worked the problem, and then, that's when we found Workspot.
Yes, that makes sense. And you learn from your experiences going forward, and then you grow from that. And I see that. That's amazing. And that takes us to number 4. And focusing on the cost of this, what surprised your CFO the most?
I'm saving, quite a bit of money over the length of the over the year. So the CFO was happy about that, but you're just balancing a big budget. And unfortunately, you take the savings from this, and then you're like, well, my software costs just went up. So at the end of the day, the last couple of years, the CFO has been, the IT budgets, they don't go down. So it's not like I'm really making anybody happy. I'm just managing what I have, because budgets, unfortunately, go up every single year. So I'm not really making the CFO happy. I'm just not spending as much on this particular technology as I was. But now other technologies are making up for that.
Nice. So, hey, that takes us to 5, our final question, which is, if another CIO called you tomorrow, what would you tell them to focus on first?
I've had this conversation with lots of, CIOs and director of ITs and such. And, I really tell them, if they have a journey where they already have data in the cloud, then it makes this a whole lot easier. If they're stuck on an on-prem solution, then this solution makes it very difficult to make that. But if they say they already have their data in the cloud and they have structure in place, it's super easy to just layer this on top of what they already have. So I always ask, what their environment looks like right now and what they're really trying to accomplish. If they want to be productive and they want to have the same speed across the board, then it's real easy to sell this. That's just how things work now. And I think that's the difficulty is the people to accept change, because you have to always be changing, especially in the world we live in now with AI and whatever. You have to be able to accept change. And some people, it's just a lot harder than others.
I love that. And I also love the fact how you're helping folks all the time. So I know, Andy, you're connecting with other CIOs and sharing, going to conferences and sharing, and then doing podcasts like this to share as well. So I definitely want to thank you for that. You've been doing that for a long time, and it's a huge benefit to a lot of folks. So, Andy and Rebecca, thank you, both of you, for taking us inside the real long-term journey of how Mead Hunt built the cloud workstation platform that actually works for AEC, Architectural Engineering and Construction, and it works at scale. So we've talked about delivering GPU performance anywhere, supporting designers, working remotely, keeping costs under control with a pay-for-what-you-use model, and most importantly, creating an experience where users trust and they want to use. So, Andy, I know, and Rebecca, if folks wanted to connect up with you later, is there a way for them to do that?
I mean, usually LinkedIn is the best thing. And it's just, my profile is just Andy Knauf. It's easy to find. LinkedIn, and the username is Andy Knauf.
Beautiful. And Rebecca?
Same with me. My username is Rebecca Yu.
Easy to find both of you guys on LinkedIn. Yeah, and you know what? I'll put both links down in the description below so you can just click and go. So thank you, Andy and Rebecca, again for joining me today and all that you have shared. Thank you so much.
Happy to be here.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
Well, hey, if you found this episode helpful, subscribe to the Workspot podcast, leave a comment, and share it with another IT or business leader in architecture, engineering, or any remote computing application. And until next time, deliver what matters most in DaaS: predictability, low cost, and an experience users love. Take care, everyone, and bye for now.